The incessant drumming of the April rain against the windows of my beloved Vermont home had always been a soothing balm, a natural rhythm to my quiet, contemplative life. At 63, I, Cindy Thorne, had cultivated an existence as meticulously curated as the rare manuscripts I once taught students to dissect. For nearly 40 years, I had held the distinguished title of Professor of Literature at the esteemed Thorne University, a position that allowed me to immerse myself in the profound beauty of human narrative, to appreciate the delicate nuances of character and plot. My world was one of quiet erudition, antique books, and the comforting scent of aged paper and strong Earl Grey tea. My home, a charming Queen Anne Victorian nestled among ancient maples in the quaint, historic town of Havenwood, Vermont, was not just bricks and mortar. It was a repository of memories, a living testament to the life my late husband Arthur and I had built. Every creaking floorboard, every sun-drenched window, whispered stories of our shared past. This particular Tuesday morning, however, the rhythmic rain offered no solace. Instead, it felt like a relentless drumbeat, counting down to something ominous. My tea, forgotten in its delicate porcelain cup, had long since gone cold, a bitter echo of the chill settling in my heart. My mind, usually a sanctuary of literary musings, was consumed by a throbbing thought. My 64th birthday was in 3 days. Would I be celebrating it alone? Again? The sudden jarring ring of my phone, a shrill interruption to the quiet contemplation, startled me. The number was unidentifiable, a string of digits I didn't recognize. At my age, every call held a flicker of importance, a potential connection to a world that sometimes felt increasingly distant. I answered, a hesitant hello, barely escaping my lips. Mrs. Thorne? A saccharine, sweet, unfamiliar female voice trilled. This is Tiffany from Luxury Living Real Estate. I'm just confirming the final walkthrough for the sale of your property, 142 Elmwood Lane. We have Mr. Thorne, Jr., scheduled for tomorrow morning at 9. The transfer of funds should be complete by noon. My breath caught in my throat. The sale? What sale? I haven't listed my property for sale. My voice, usually calm and measured, was a brittle whisper of disbelief. A brief, awkward silence on the other end. Then a tinkling, brittle laugh. Oh, Mrs. Thorne, there must be some misunderstanding. Mr. Ethan Thorne, your son, provided all the necessary documentation. Power of attorney. Signed agreements. He's been handling all the arrangements for months. He specifically requested we keep the details discreet, given your delicate health. Delicate health. The words, uttered with such patronizing false concern, sent a jolt of icy clarity through me. Ethan, my son. He was doing this. He was selling my home. And my car, I suddenly realized, a chilling certainty forming in my gut. He had been asking for the keys to my vintage Mercedes sedan, the one Arthur had lovingly restored, for tune-ups over the past few weeks. Put my son on the phone, I demanded, my voice now laced with an icy steel that surprised even myself. The polite real estate agent quickly complied. Mom? Ethan's voice, when it came, was devoid of its usual casual warmth, replaced by an unsettlingly formal, almost celebratory tone. Finally reached you. I was just about to call. Good news. Everything's finalized. The house is sold. And the car, too. You won't have to worry about a thing. My vision blurred. The rain outside seemed to intensify, matching the storm brewing within me. Ethan, I managed, the name a strangled sound. What in God's name are you talking about? You sold my house? My car? Without my knowledge? How could you? His response was chillingly calm, as if discussing the weather. Mom, don't be dramatic. It's for your own good. You're getting older, living alone in that big house. It's too much for you. The upkeep, the taxes, the solitude, and the Mercedes is a gas guzzler. I found you a lovely assisted living facility, Havenwood Retirement Gardens. It's got excellent amenities, 24-hour care, social activities. You'll love it. And it's already paid for the first year with the proceeds from the house. My carefully constructed world imploded. Assisted living. A gilded cage, purchased with my own legacy. Paid for with the proceeds? I repeated, my voice rising to a raw, desperate crescendo. What proceeds, Ethan? That house is my home. It's all I have left of your father. And you sold it? Why? Why now? Because I'm getting married tomorrow, Mom. The abrupt shift in his tone, from condescendingly calm to sharply defensive, was jarring. To Serafina. We need the capital for our future. We're buying a place in Nantucket, starting a new life. And frankly, Mom, you've always been a burden. This is the cleanest way. No fuss, no arguments. You'll be comfortable, and we'll be free. Free? The word was a poisoned dart, striking me through the heart. Free of me, you mean? You traitor. How could you do this to me? Your own mother? Don't call me that, he snapped, his composure finally cracking. Don't you dare. You never cared about my happiness. Only your books and your dusty old house. This is my life now, Mom, and you're not a part of it. Goodbye. The line went dead. The dial tone buzzed, a final, definitive severing. My son, the boy I had raised, sacrificed for, poured my very soul into, had cast me aside like an inconvenient piece of furniture. Not just cast me aside, but had brazenly stolen my past, liquidated my future, and then, with chilling audacity, claimed it was for my own good. I stood there, the receiver still clutched in my trembling hand, the rain outside blurring into a watery haze. My home, my sanctuary, was gone. My car, my last vestige of independent movement, was gone. And my son, my only child, had orchestrated it all with the cold precision of a predator. But they had no idea. They had no idea about the $50 million secret hidden in the walls of this old Victorian, a secret only Arthur and I had ever known. And they certainly had no idea what a retired professor of literature, a woman steeped in the dramatic narratives of human betrayal and triumph, was truly capable of when pushed to her absolute limit. My world might have shattered, but from the fragments, a terrifying clarity emerged. This wasn't just about money, or a house, or a car. This was about dignity, about legacy, and about fighting for the truth, even if it meant confronting the darkest corners of my own family. My mind, trained to unravel complex narratives and analyze human motivation, immediately began to plot. The story of Cindy Thorne was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. And it was going to be a masterpiece of vengeance. The initial paralysis gave way to a cold, analytical fury. Arthur, my late husband, had always said my greatest strength was my ability to see beyond the obvious, to discern the hidden layers of a text, a person, a situation. Now, this skill, honed over decades of literary scholarship, turned inwards, dissecting the grotesque plot that had just unfolded around me. My first instinct was to confirm the unthinkable. I stumbled to my desk, my fingers fumbling with the laptop. Online banking. My primary checking and savings accounts drained. Not entirely, but leaving only a meager, almost insulting balance, a pittance to suggest some residual care. My investment accounts, inexplicably locked, with a message about suspicious activity and requiring verification through authorized power of attorney. The very power of attorney Ethan must have somehow acquired, or, more likely, forged. The audacity of it took my breath away. I tried to call the local real estate office, but the line was busy, or perhaps, already disconnected. I drove, or rather, tried to drive, to the garage where Arthur's vintage Mercedes, my last bastion of freedom, was supposedly getting its tune-up. The garage attendant, a kindly old man named Gus who had known Arthur for years, looked at me with pity. "Professor Thorne," he said, shaking his head. "Your son picked it up yesterday. Said he was taking it to a specialty restoration shop out of state. Didn't even pay the outstanding bill. Just took it. The car, too, was gone." Panic, cold and sharp, threatened to overwhelm me. My professional career had been in literature, not finance or law. But I had a network, a lifetime of connections, built on mutual respect and intellectual camaraderie. My first call was to Clara Maxwell, a brilliant, retired legal scholar and former colleague from Thorn University. Clara, a woman of formidable intellect and even more formidable wit, was living a peaceful life of gardening and civil rights advocacy in a neighboring town. She answered on the second ring, her voice crisp and clear. "Clara, it's Cindy. I need your mind, and perhaps your less conventional resources. My son, Ethan, has just sold my house and my car, apparently with forged documents, and announced he's getting married tomorrow. He's effectively dispossessed me." Silence on Clara's end, a rare moment of speechlessness for her. Then, a low, dangerous hum. "Cindy, did I hear that correctly? Ethan? That feckless boy? Give me the details." "Every single one." As I recounted the horrifying events, Clara interjected with sharp, pointed questions, piecing together the timeline, the possible legal angles. "Power of attorney? A classic move," she mused, "but easily challenged if it was fraudulently obtained. And the house sale? That's a federal offense if you can prove duress or forgery. Who is this Serafina?" "His fiancée. He mentioned they're buying a place in Nantucket. She's ambitious, materialistic. I always felt there was something calculating behind her smile." "Aha," Clara said, a new energy entering her voice. "The puppet master. This is rarely a solo act. Cindy, I'm coming over, and I'm bringing my investigative coffee. We're going to unravel this tangled plot thread by thread, and we're going to save your legacy. You didn't just teach about justice in literature, you lived it." Within the hour, Clara, a whirlwind of tweed and fierce determination, was in my living room. She listened patiently as I recounted the phone call, the drained bank accounts, the missing car. Her eyes, usually twinkling with academic amusement, were now sharp with strategic intent. "First," she declared, "we need to secure the house, physically. Get a locksmith here immediately. Change every lock. And alert the local police department, discreetly, that there's a potential real estate fraud in progress. Do not mention Ethan by name yet. Just report suspicious activity regarding your property. We need official documentation." As I called the locksmith, Clara began a series of calls of her own. To her network of retired legal eagles, to a few tenacious investigative journalists she knew, and to a former student, now a forensic accountant, who owed her a significant favor. "Now, Cindy," Clara said, pouring us both fresh, strong coffee, "let's talk about that hidden $50 million secret in the walls. Is this a literary metaphor, or do you mean that literally?" I smiled, a grim, determined smile. "Literally, Clara. Arthur was not just a classics professor. He was also a passionate, almost obsessive collector of rare historical artifacts. He had a particular fascination with the American Revolution and early colonial documents. Over decades, he acquired an extraordinary collection of original letters, maps, and even a few signed legal documents from the Founding Fathers. We kept it quiet, for security reasons, and because Arthur believed in preserving history, not flaunting it. He built a hidden, climate-controlled vault behind a reinforced bookshelf in his study. The collection, when last appraised discreetly, was valued at over $50 million, untraceable, unregistered, and to Ethan's knowledge, non-existent. Clara's eyes widened. "Cindy, you held the keys to a national treasure. Why did you never tell Ethan?" "Arthur and I had plans to establish a small, private museum, a research center perhaps, but then he passed. And Ethan has always been driven by immediate gratification. He wouldn't have understood the historical significance. He would have seen it as merely an asset to be liquidated for his latest whim. We always kept our personal finances separate from his inheritance from Arthur's smaller trust. This was our nest egg, meant for a legacy beyond mere money." A new light entered Clara's eyes. "Cindy, this changes everything. This isn't just about protecting your house. It's about protecting a piece of history. This collection is your ultimate leverage. They sold the house without knowing its true value. That's not just fraud. That's poetic justice." Over the next few hours, we worked with a furious intensity. The locksmith secured the house. The local police, surprisingly efficient, took my initial report, noting the suspicious circumstances of the alleged sale. They promised a follow-up, though I knew formal action would take time. Clara's network began to yield results. Her forensic accountant confirmed our worst fears. Ethan had systematically siphoned funds from my shared accounts for months. Then, using a subtly altered power of attorney document, likely obtained during one of my recent mild bouts of flu when I was disoriented, he'd transferred the house and car titles. Serafina's fingerprints were all over the transactions. Large, untraceable payments made to her offshore accounts, a sudden surge in her personal wealth, discreet inquiries into the value of high-end properties in Nantucket. She was not just a beneficiary, she was the architect. She had been exploiting Ethan's weakness and entitlement, turning him into a weapon against his own mother. Clara's investigative journalist contact, a tenacious young woman named Maya Chen, had already started digging into Serafina Sterling. Her preliminary findings were damning. Serafina, born Sarah Jenkins, had a history of involvement with wealthy, older men, each relationship ending with the man experiencing significant financial setbacks, while Sarah emerged wealthier and untraceable. No direct arrests, but a clear pattern of exploitation, often masked by elaborate prenuptial agreements or carefully orchestrated investments that vanished. She was a professional black widow, not of life, but of fortune. And Ethan, my naive son, was her latest, most lucrative target. "They plan to get married tomorrow," I whispered, the words tasting like ash. "In Nantucket. That's why the rush." Clara slammed her fist lightly on the table. "Then we crashed the wedding. Not with a scene, Cindy. With irrefutable evidence. We dismantle their entire charade, piece by piece, in front of everyone who matters. And we do it before they can formalize this union and liquidate your precious collection, which they don't even know exists." The plan began to coalesce, a blend of legal strategy, tactical disruption, and psychological warfare. Clara immediately initiated emergency injunctions to freeze the sale of the house and car, citing probable fraud and a fraudulently obtained power of attorney. This was a long shot for such short notice, but her contacts in the judiciary promised to expedite the review based on the severity of the alleged fraud and the imminent wedding. We needed to officially appraise and document Arthur's collection. Clara knew a highly discreet ethical art appraiser and historical archivist who specialized in such cases. Dr. Evelyn Reed, a formidable woman with a sharp mind and an even sharper eye, arrived that evening, working through the night, meticulously cataloging and appraising the vast collection hidden behind the study wall. The initial estimate, well over $50 million. The historical significance, priceless. This immediately elevated the scale of the crime from simple familial dispute to something far more serious, involving cultural patrimony. This was my realm. I spent hours with Maya Chen, the journalist, feeding her the story, but with a twist. I framed it not just as a personal betrayal, but as a cautionary tale of elder exploitation and sophisticated financial fraud, all orchestrated by Serafina, with my son as an unwitting accomplice. I provided Maya with copies of the fraudulent documents, the bank statements, the history of Serafina's previous relationships. I instructed Maya to hold the story until after we had made our move at the wedding. The headlines needed to be devastating, but accurate. By dawn, the house was a hive of quiet, determined activity. Dr. Reed was still meticulously documenting the collection. Clara was on the phone, a legal eagle fighting for those emergency injunctions. And I, Cindy Thorne, was preparing for battle. I chose a simple, elegant navy blue dress, a color that conveyed authority without ostentation. My hair, a natural silver, was styled in a severe, no-nonsense bun. No wig this time. My vulnerability would be my strength, a stark contrast to their polished deceit. We hired a private jet. Time was of the essence. Nantucket was a world away, and the wedding was scheduled for 2 p.m. The private jet was a symbol of my quiet, independent wealth, a stark contrast to the desperation of Ethan and Serafina's schemes. As we soared over the verdant landscape of New England, my heart hammered against my ribs, a strange mix of dread and exhilarating purpose. Clara, ever the strategist, reviewed our plan for the 100th time, her glasses perched on her nose. Maya Chen, the journalist, sat beside us, her laptop glowing, already drafting the exposé that would shake the foundations of Ethan and Serafina's carefully constructed world. "All right, Cindy," Clara stated, her voice firm. "The emergency injunction on the house sale has been filed. It's a long shot for immediate effect, but it creates a legal cloud. The car, however, is a different story. It's likely already been moved to one of Serafina's shell corporations. We'll pursue that separately." I nodded, my gaze fixed on the clouds below. The car was a painful loss, a personal violation, but the house, with Arthur's priceless collection, was the real battleground. "Dr. Reed has completed the initial appraisal," Clara continued. "The collection is, indeed, beyond anything we estimated. Her detailed report, complete with provenance and initial valuation, is now digitally sealed and sent to a secure legal server, accessible only by the FBI's Art Crimes Division once we trigger the release. This turns their simple fraud into grand larceny on an international scale, given the potential for the artifacts to be moved offshore." A chill ran down my spine, but also a surge of grim satisfaction. They had walked into a lion's den, completely unaware of the sleeping beast within. We landed on Nantucket an hour before the wedding. The island, usually a picture of quaint charm, now felt like a stage set for a drama of epic proportions. The ceremony was taking place at the exclusive Ocean's Crest Resort, a sprawling estate overlooking the shimmering Atlantic. As we drove towards the resort, Maya worked furiously on her phone. "Serafina Sterling, formerly Sarah Jenkins, has a very colorful past," she announced, her eyes gleaming with the thrill of discovery. "Multiple aliases, a string of highly suspicious business partnerships that vanished into thin air, and a small, unconfirmed report of a prior, very quiet marriage in the Caribbean that ended with the husband suddenly disappearing from public life. No body, no charges, but a pattern, Cindy. A very distinct, very dangerous pattern." My blood ran cold. Ethan wasn't just being defrauded, he was in actual danger. This made my resolve even stronger. We arrived at the resort, blending into the stream of elegantly dressed guests. The scene was lavish. Cascading white flowers, a string quartet playing classical music, servers circulating with champagne flutes. Ethan, looking impossibly handsome in a bespoke suit, stood at the altar, a nervous but excited smile on his face, oblivious. Serafina, stunning in a couture gown, was about to make her grand entrance. Her mother, a formidable woman with an air of inherited entitlement, sat in the front row, preening. Clara and I moved discreetly to the third row, close enough to see the expressions on their faces, far enough to maintain a strategic distance. Maya, with her camera disguised as a simple handbag, found a vantage point near the back. The music swelled. Serafina began her majestic walk down the aisle, her train sweeping behind her like a frothy cloud, her smile radiant, a mask of angelic innocence. She paused halfway, taking in the adoring gazes, particularly Ethan's. It was then that I activated the final part of our plan, the unveiling. On a signal from Clara, a prearranged team of discreet technicians, hired through Clara's deep network, simultaneously hacked into the resort's sophisticated AV system. The large screens flanking the altar, currently displaying a looping slideshow of happy couple photos, suddenly flickered. And then, the images changed. The first image was a stark, irrefutable visual, a high-resolution photograph of my mutilated, shorn scalp, stark and horrifying. A collective gasp rippled through the audience. Then a series of documents flashed across the screens, clear and legible for all to see. Scanned copies of my bank statements, showing the systematic draining of my accounts. The fraudulent power of attorney document, with highlighted forensic analysis pointing to tampering. The property deed for my house, annotated with the rushed, illegal transfer details. Detailed appraisals of Arthur's hidden collection, with individual photos of priceless historical artifacts, complete with their estimated multi-million-dollar valuations. A concise summary of Serafina's true identity, Sarah Jenkins, her history of previous marriages, and the financial ruin that followed each of them, complete with a timeline and legal disclaimers from Clara's law firm. And finally, a copy of the official police report I had filed, detailing the alleged fraud and dispossession. The murmurs in the room grew into a roar. Guests pointed, gasped, covered their mouths in horror. Serafina, mid-stride, froze. Her angelic smile contorted into a mask of pure, unadulterated rage and terror. She spun around, her eyes blazing, searching for the source of the catastrophe, her gaze finally locking onto mine. "Cindy!" she shrieked, her voice stripped of its sugary veneer, raw with fury and panic. "What have you done, you old witch?" Ethan, who had been staring at the screens, his face pale, a mixture of disbelief and dawning horror, finally turned to Serafina. "Serafina, what? What is this? What have you done to my mother? To my house?" His voice cracked, a desperate plea for denial. Before Serafina could lunge at me, before anyone else could truly react, a team of impeccably dressed federal agents, led by a stern-faced woman in a dark suit, moved swiftly through the stunned crowd. They had been discreetly blending in, waiting for our signal, alerted by Clara's expedited filing. "Serafina Sterling, also known as Sarah Jenkins," the lead agent announced, her voice cutting through the chaos, clear and authoritative. "You are under arrest for multiple counts of grand larceny, aggravated fraud, elder exploitation, and conspiracy to traffic stolen historical artifacts. You have the right to remain silent." The entire ballroom erupted. Guests stood, some pointing, some gasping, others pulling out their phones to record the unfolding drama. Serafina's mother, whimpering, tried to make a break for the side exit, but was quickly intercepted by another agent. Maya Chen, the journalist, was already snapping photos, her eyes alight with the thrill of the scoop. Serafina screamed again, a raw, guttural sound, as the agents secured her wrists with zip ties. "No, this is a lie, Cindy, you old hag. You set me up." I simply watched, my expression serene, a quiet triumph in my eyes. The performance was over. The truth, meticulously uncovered, had laid bare their deceit. Ethan, utterly shattered, stood alone at the altar, the wedding band still clutched in his trembling hand. He looked at me, his eyes pleading, confused, as if seeing me for the first time. "Mum?" I didn't say a word. I simply stood, a quiet, formidable figure in my navy dress, my silver hair a beacon of unyielding truth. The minister, utterly bewildered, had retreated into the background. The wedding was definitively, spectacularly, over. The aftermath was swift and uncompromising. Serafina and her mother were taken into federal custody. The extensive documentation I had provided, combined with Dr. Reed's meticulous appraisal of Arthur's collection and Clara's immediate asset freeze on Serafina's ill-gotten gains, proved to be an ironclad case. The media frenzy was unprecedented. The Ocean's Crest wedding, once anticipated as the social event of the season, became a national sensation. A cautionary tale splashed across every major news outlet. Bride arrested at altar for multi-million-dollar fraud and historical artifact heist. Professor Cindy Thorne unmasks son's scheming fiancé. Hidden treasure of Havenwood House exposed in dramatic wedding bust. My carefully cultivated private life was suddenly thrust into the spotlight. But this time, I was the hero, the shrewd, unshakable matriarch who had saved her family's legacy and her son from a dangerous predator. Ethan was, understandably, devastated. The depth of Serafina's deception, the blatant manipulation, the cold-hearted theft was a brutal awakening. He didn't understand how he could have been so blind, so easily controlled by her charm and promises of wealth. The initial days were a blur of shock, anger, and profound self-pity. He couldn't look me in the eye, caught between his shattered illusions and the overwhelming evidence of Serafina's treachery. But as the legal process unfolded, as more of Serafina's past machinations came to light, including a series of small, untraceable donations from various vulnerable men, and a history of calculated emotional abuse, Ethan slowly, painfully, began to see the truth. He began to understand that he had not been a co-conspirator, but merely another pawn in Serafina's cruel game. My house, thankfully, was legally protected from the sale. Arthur's collection, now officially appraised and secured by the FBI, was returned to me, its immense value recognized and protected. I decided to work with a reputable museum to display a portion of the collection, ensuring its historical significance could be shared with the public, a legacy far more profound than any individual fortune. The remainder I placed in a secure, climate-controlled vault, to be managed by a trusted art conservator and independent legal firm. Ethan eventually came to me, weeks later, his face haggard, his eyes filled with a raw, desperate apology. "Mom," he began, his voice choked with emotion. I'm so sorry. I should have listened to you. I was so blind. How could I have been so stupid?" I looked at my son, the boy I had raised, now a man broken by his own naivety and entitlement. Love, Ethan, especially a desperate kind of love for external validation or quick wealth, can be a powerful blinding agent, I said gently, my voice soft but firm. Serafina was very good at what she did. She preyed on your weaknesses, your desire for an easy path, and you wanted to believe in her, but sometimes wishing for something doesn't make it true. We didn't fully reconcile immediately. Trust, once fractured, takes time to rebuild. But we started. I set clear boundaries. I would always be his mother, but I would no longer be his financial safety net or his emotional punching bag. He began therapy, a necessary step for him to understand his own patterns of dependence and to rebuild his self-worth from a foundation of genuine effort rather than inherited privilege. He eventually found a job, a modest one, but one that required honest work and offered a path to true independence. He learned, slowly, the value of earning, not just taking. My own life blossomed with a newfound purpose. The experience had been harrowing, but it had also been a profound catalyst. I worked closely with Dr. Reed and other historians to curate a special exhibition of Arthur's collection at the National Museum of American History. The exhibition, titled Whispers from the Past, the Thorn Collection, drew record crowds and critical acclaim. I became a respected figure in the art world, not just a scholar, but a guardian of history. I sold my large Victorian home in Havenwood, not out of defeat, but out of choice. It had served its purpose. With a portion of the funds from a trust Arthur had left me, separate from the collection, I purchased a charming modern townhouse in Santa Barbara, California. It was smaller, bathed in sunshine, and closer to Clara, who had also decided to relocate to the warmer climate. Here, I pursued my passion for literature and history without the burden of a large estate or the ghosts of past betrayals. I volunteered at the local library, started a literary salon, and even began writing my own memoirs, a story of resilience, of hidden treasures, and the enduring power of truth. Serafina and her mother. Their names occasionally surfaced in legal papers, usually in footnotes to other, larger federal cases of fraud and exploitation. Serafina, stripped of her assets and her reputation, was last seen fighting a losing battle against extradition to a Caribbean country for her alleged prior marital indiscretions. Her mother, too, faced legal repercussions for her complicity in the fraudulent schemes. Their world, built on deceit and avarice, had indeed crumbled to ashes. I felt no savage triumph, no lingering desire for revenge, only a quiet, resolute satisfaction. My aim had never been retribution, but restoration. For Arthur's legacy, for my own dignity, and for the hope that Ethan might one day find his own path to integrity. Sometimes, in the quiet of the evening, as the Santa Barbara sunset painted the sky in hues of fiery orange and soft lavender, I would sit on my terrace, sipping Earl Grey tea. My silver hair, no longer just a physical attribute, felt like a crown of earned wisdom. The very act of betrayal, meant to dispossess me, had instead been the catalyst for my ultimate liberation. This is my story, a testament to the unyielding power of foresight and the unwavering courage to protect your own truth. Have you ever been dismissed? Belittled? Have you ever had your very essence attacked, your vulnerabilities exposed by those you thought you could trust? Remember this: appearances can be deceiving, and the most dangerous threats often wear the most charming smiles. But beneath the surface, under the veneer of beauty and apparent normalcy, lies a deeper truth, waiting to be unearthed. The world is not always kind. It is often a complex game of strategy and hidden agendas. But you are stronger than you know. You possess an inner resilience, an intuitive wisdom that can guide you through the darkest betrayals. Trust your instincts. Cultivate your own resources, not just financial, but intellectual and emotional. Build your own safety net, your own personal fortress, so that when the storm inevitably comes, you are not swept away, but stand firm, unyielding, and ultimately free. For sometimes, the most profound acts of self-preservation are born from the deepest wounds, and sometimes, the very people who try to cut you down, to strip you bare, inadvertently reveal the incredible strength, the true beauty, the unbreakable spirit that lies within. They may think they have left you with nothing, but in reality, they have cleared the path for you to build something far greater, far more authentic, and infinitely more powerful than they could ever comprehend. My dispossessed house was not a mark of shame. It was the genesis of a grander legacy, a symbol of a life reclaimed, redefined, and ultimately, gloriously mine. My days in Santa Barbara became a vibrant tapestry of intellectual engagement and personal fulfillment. My literary salon, initially a small gathering of local book lovers, quickly grew into a thriving community of writers, academics, and curious minds. We met twice a week, discussing everything from classical epics to contemporary thrillers, and my insights, honed over decades of teaching, were eagerly sought. I discovered a joy in sharing knowledge outside the rigid confines of academia, a freedom in discussions that were passionate, not graded. My connection with Clara deepened, our bond forged in the fires of shared adversity. She too found renewed purpose in Santa Barbara, dedicating her formidable legal acumen to pro bono work for victims of elder fraud. We often spent evenings on my terrace, the Pacific breeze carrying the scent of salt and jasmine, recounting our days, analyzing legal precedents, and dissecting the latest literary offerings. I began to travel, something Arthur and I had always dreamed of but postponed for various reasons. His academic commitments, Ethan's schooling, the endless demands of life. Now, unburdened by a large house or demanding obligations, I embraced the world. My first trip was to Florence, Italy, a city that had always captivated my literary imagination. I wandered through ancient streets, lost myself in the Uffizi Gallery, and spent hours in dusty bookstores, inhaling the scent of centuries-old paper. I wrote copious notes in a leather-bound journal, observing, reflecting, soaking in every detail. My writing, once confined to academic papers, now flowed freely, infused with the raw emotions of my recent experiences and the quiet joy of discovery. Ethan continued his journey of self-discovery and redemption. He enrolled in an online business ethics course, a small but significant step. He sent me weekly emails, not asking for money, but sharing his thoughts, his struggles, his slow, arduous process of rebuilding. He had taken a job as a junior analyst at a small ethical investment firm, a far cry from the high-flying life Serafina had promised him. He was learning the value of honest work, of true merit. One day, he called, his voice hesitant. "Mom," he said, I know it's a lot to ask, but would you consider visiting? I'd like to introduce you to my new boss, and I just want to show you the progress I've made." It was a tentative step, a fragile bridge, but a step nonetheless. I agreed. The visit was both awkward and profoundly moving. Ethan was different. Humbled, perhaps. He was still the same boy I loved, but there was a newfound maturity in his eyes, a genuine remorse that finally felt real. He introduced me to his colleagues, who seemed to genuinely respect him. He cooked me dinner in his modest apartment, a far cry from the Nantucket mansion he had envisioned. As we talked late into the night, I saw glimpses of the kind, intelligent boy I had once known, buried beneath layers of entitlement and misguided ambition. The path to full reconciliation would be long, but for the first time I felt a flicker of hope for his future. Serafina and her mother, meanwhile, faced the full force of the law. The charges of elder exploitation, grand larceny, and the conspiracy to traffic historical artifacts were severe. Their legal team, initially confident, crumbled under the weight of Clara's meticulous evidence and the FBI's thorough investigation. Serafina, who had always reveled in the spotlight, found herself facing the harsh glare of public scrutiny, her carefully constructed facade shattered. The media, having initially celebrated her lavish lifestyle, now dissected her every move, exposing her calculated cruelty and relentless greed. Her previous marriages and disappeared funds became a national scandal, leading to further investigations and charges in other states and countries. Her mother, implicated as a co-conspirator, received a lighter sentence but faced complete financial ruin and social ostracism. Justice, though slow, was uncompromising. My memoir, tentatively titled The Unveiling, How a Professor Found Her Power, began to take shape. It wasn't just a tale of betrayal and triumph, but a deeper exploration of legacy, family, and the quiet strength of a life lived authentically. I found a literary agent, a passionate young woman named Sophia, who was captivated by my story. She believed it had the potential to inspire others, particularly older women who might feel marginalized or overlooked. The publishing process was exhilarating, a new adventure in storytelling. My 64th birthday arrived, quietly, in Santa Barbara. Clara threw a small dinner party on my terrace, a gathering of new friends and trusted allies. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery oranges and purples, I looked around at the faces, etched with kindness and respect. I raised my glass. To new beginnings, I said, my voice strong, clear, and to the unexpected gifts that emerge from the ashes of what we thought was lost. My life was no longer defined by what had been taken from me, but by what I had chosen to build. The quiet strength I had always possessed, honed by years of intellectual pursuit, had been tested and proven true. The incident with Ethan and Serafina had been a crucible, burning away the dross of expectation and obligation, leaving behind the pure gold of self-reliance and genuine connection. The Thorn Collection, housed in a dedicated wing of the National Museum of American History, became a source of immense pride. I spent time at the museum, occasionally giving lectures, sharing the stories behind each artifact, breathing life into the history Arthur had so carefully preserved. It was a tangible legacy, a testament to a life dedicated to knowledge and culture, a legacy far more meaningful than any mere financial inheritance. I continued to write, to travel, to learn. My little townhouse in Santa Barbara, filled with sunlight and the scent of jasmine, was my sanctuary, a place of peace and creativity. I learned to paint, a new form of expression that allowed me to explore color and form in ways words never could. I joined a local hiking group, finding solace and exhilaration in the winding trails of the Santa Ynez Mountains. Every day was an opportunity for growth, for discovery, for connection. My relationship with Ethan, though still evolving, was on a path of genuine healing. He visited often, and our conversations were no longer fraught with tension but filled with quiet understanding. He had learned humility, empathy, and the true value of hard work. He was slowly, painstakingly, becoming the man I had always hoped he would be, not the one Serafina had tried to mold him into. This is my story. Not a fairy tale, but a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Life, in its unpredictable grandeur, often throws us into the deepest valleys when we least expect it. But it is in those valleys, in the darkest moments of betrayal and despair, that we often discover the hidden strengths we never knew we possessed. We learn that true wealth isn't measured in bank accounts or property deeds, but in the richness of our character, the depth of our relationships, and the unwavering courage to define our own destiny. So, if you find yourself at a crossroads, facing an unimaginable betrayal, remember Cindy Thorne. Remember that even when the world seems to conspire against you, when those closest to you seek to diminish your worth, you hold the power to rewrite your own narrative. You possess a hidden strength, a reservoir of resilience that can transform adversity into opportunity, loss into liberation, and quiet desperation into a triumph of the human spirit. The past does not dictate your future. It merely illuminates the path to a stronger, more authentic, and ultimately, more beautiful you. Your story, like mine, is waiting to be rewritten, chapter by glorious chapter. And the pen, my dear friend, is always in your hand.